Welcome to the Flame Tree Myth and Fiction Podcast.
Welcome to Under the Same Moon. In today's episode, which is a couple of days ahead of the buck moon, we are presenting you with two moon tales. Stories where the night dances with ancient power as the moon watches. And we are not talking about that cold, distant satellite that NASA sends probes to. No, we are talking about the moon, the one that's been tugging at our hearts since we first crawled out of caves to stare up at the dark and unknown. The moon that makes wolves howl, tides rise, and sensible people do incredibly foolish things. In folklore, it's the realm of transformation, the trigger for curses, the silent witnesses to our most dangerous desires. It turns maidens into dancers, mothers into desperate protectors, and ordinary knights into something altogether more hungry. Today, we bring you two stories, one modern, one classic, both bound by a silver thread and dark consequence. Our first tale is Elou Carroll's Shattered Moon, Hungry Sea from our anthology, Moon Falling, where a child's curiosity unleashes oceanic fury, proving that some jewellery should never be touched and some secrets should stay sewn into the sky. Narrated by Olivia.
Shattered Moon, Hungry Sea by Elou Carroll. Once the sun has whispered its soft goodnight upon the roof, Mama makes jewellery from the stars. She reaches her great arm up and plucks all of the colours of the universe from the smooth velvet pouch of the sky and needles them together with chains as light as spider silk. I watch each night, hidden behind jewel-stacked shelves when I should be sleeping. It is secret work, Mama says, and secrets are not for seeing and certainly not for touching. But I want to see them, feel them cold and smooth in my hand. Between my fingers, I fiddle with fire-red beads, slow roll them across my palm. One jerk, and a pale grey necklace crashes to the ground. And when it shatters, the night sky chokes with moon dust. Mama spins, eyes my empty hands and darkening cheeks, then the secret spilled across the floorboards. "Fool girl!" she cries. She gathers her gems and her chains and rushes to the door, bare feet snagging on the broken shards of the moon. "Come, Itza, we must run, it is not safe anymore." "But Mama..." The ocean crashes against the side of the house, angry, howling, hungry. Without the great grey round of the moon, the sea has been untethered. It bites at the city, takes each wooden shack between its teeth and chews. When it spits them out, they are little more than kindling, too wet to set aflame. "Itza!" And we are running, our footsteps leaving eddies in their wake, which are soon filled up with salt. The sea nips at our heels, licks at our ankles and recedes. While it swallows the streets to our sides, we run to the hill's top, safe, or safer, uneaten. It gulps down the apothecary, and the air is filled with herbs and spices and warmth that clogs my throat. I clutch my knees and spit bile into the salt. "Mama?" My voice scrapes. She shakes her head and holds a finger to her lips, but the sea has heard us now, and it whispers. Words lapping against words in a crush and swell so loud we can't quite make it out. Somewhere in the water, which has risen to our knees, I feel the sea say, "Thank you. No moon now. We are free. We are free." Mama holds her bag to her chest. One hand is inside, fingers flicking this way and that. The sea grows curious. What is she doing? Mama shakes her head again and shapes her mouth into a no. It chomps down on the fishmongers, and a frown flows between my toes. When the fish do not wake upon the ocean's large tongue, the water lets out a wail that sounds like an armada of hulls splitting on glass-sharp rocks, their metal bodies screeching. I press my hands to my ears. What is she doing? The sea demands, its cold teeth pricking my thighs. The bag shuffles against her, and she moves faster, breath clouding about her mouth. Up above, the moon dust swirls and gathers. What is she doing? What is she doing? The water tugs at my legs, the beginnings of a current dragging it back to the shore's edge. It sinks its teeth desperate. No, no, no! Mama! Almost there, Itza, hold on. Around us the waves lap. No, 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 no! And my feet slide in the salt. To the left, another building falls, and another. But the water isn't hungry anymore. It spits up doors and windows, the bent sign from the whitesmith, as if to rebuild the shack city, to give it back chewed up and broken. See, we do not have to. See, you do not have to. It is okay now. She can stop. It releases its bite and strokes at my thighs, gently soothing. Make her stop! The new moon is almost whole, only a sliver of dust still circling its way across the night. Mama makes one last thrust into the bag and loops a thin chain around her neck. The new moon hangs against her skin. The moon in the sky is full, whole, angry. No! The ocean screams, and my feet are swept from beneath me. I breathe in water and it burns. Itza! Mama's cry is loud, but the wave is louder. It flushes into my ears, my eyes, my mouth, my nose, and I can't breathe. My fingernails break against the ground. I claw at it, but the water is strong. The sea is being sucked back to port, and me with it. Mama's hand comes warm around my wrist. She is anchored to something. She has always been a ballast. Mama heaves and hauls, and I am a tug of war between her and the sea. The ocean has reached my lungs, and it whispers, "Mine, mine, mine." But Mama doesn't let go, and her hand on my wrist tells the water, "No, you can't have her, no." We have been here for hours, days, weeks. I am dying. I am dead. I am the sea. I am a girl. I am my mama's daughter. I am alive. Mama pulls and pulls, and the air rushes into my chest, evicts the usurping blue, and leaves me gasping and grateful. The ocean takes one last tug before the moon scoops it back into its basin. Without the water, Mama and I collapse into a mound in the mud, shaking and cold. Oh, Itza! Oh, my girl! She gathers me close, and we rock. She gathers me close, and we watch the wreckage of the shack city drift out to sea. Later, when we are dry and safe, and the moon's white light tugs our shoulders, Mama opens the bag and fills her hands with jewels. "Mama?" I ask, and my voice croaks with lingering salt. "It is best, Itza," she says, her smile soft and sad. She reaches her great arm up and places all the colours of the universe safe in the smooth velvet pouch of the sky.
Carroll's tale reminds us that innocence and destruction are often each other's twins. Also, that the moon isn't just a celestial body. It's literally a crafted jewellery, delicate and deadly. When shattered, it doesn't just break, it unleashes. This modern horror understands something ancient. Children see magic where grown-ups see only matter, and sometimes that sight comes with a terrible price. Next, we journey back over a century to 1901, where Barry Pain yes, better known for his humor in Punch magazine, reveals his darker gifts in The Moon Slave, a story that can be found in our weird horror collection, narrated by B.
The Moon Slave by Barry Pain. The Princess Viola had, even in her childhood, an inevitable submission to the dance. A rhythmical madness in her blood answered hotly to the dance music, swaying her, as the wind sways trees, to movements of perfect sympathy and grace. For the rest, she had her beauty, and her long hair that reached to her knees, and was thought lovable, but she was never very fervent and vivid unless she was dancing. At other times there almost seemed to be a touch of lethargy upon her. Now, when she was 16 years old, she was betrothed to the Prince Hugo. With others, the betrothal was merely a question of state. With her, it was merely a question of obedience to the wishes of authority. It had been arranged. Hugo was comme ci comme ça, no god in her eyes. It did not matter. But with Hugo, it was quite different. He loved her. The betrothal was celebrated by a banquet, and afterwards by a dance in the great hall of the palace. From this dance the princess soon made her escape, quite discontented, and went to the furthest part of the palace gardens, where she could no longer hear the music calling her. "They are all right," she said to herself as she thought of the men she had left, "but they cannot dance. Mechanically they are all right, they have learnt it, and they don't make childish mistakes, but they are only 1, 2, 3 machines. They haven't learned the inspiration of dancing. It is so different when I dance alone." She wandered on until she reached an old forsaken maze. It had been planned by a former king. All round it was a high crumbling wall with foxgloves growing on it. The maze itself had all its paths bordered with high, opaque hedges. In the very centre was a circular open space with tall pine trees growing round it. Many years ago the clue to the maze had been lost. It was but rarely now that anyone entered it. Its gravel paths were green with weeds, and in some places the hedges spreading beyond their borders had made the way almost impassable. For a moment or two Viola stood peering in at the gate, a narrow gate with curiously twisted bars of wrought iron surmounted by a heraldic device. Then the whim seized her to enter the maze and to try and find the space in the centre. She opened the gate and went in. Outside, everything was uncannily visible in the light of the full moon, but here, in the dark-shaded alleys, the night was conscious of itself. She soon forgot her purpose and wandered about quite aimlessly, sometimes forcing her way where their brambles had flung a lace barrier across her path, and a dragging mass of convolvulus struck wet and cool upon her cheek. As chance would have it, she suddenly found herself standing under the tall pines and looking at the open space that formed the goal of the maze. She was pleased that she had got there. Here the ground was carpeted with sand, fine, and as it seemed beaten hard. From the summer night sky immediately above, the moonlight, unobstructed here, streamed straight down upon the scene. Viola began to think about dancing. Over the dry, smooth sand, her little satin shoes moved easily, stepping and gliding, circling and stepping, as she hummed the tune to which they moved. In the centre of the space, she paused, looked at the wall of dark trees all around, at the shining stretches of silvery sand and the moon above. "My beautiful, moonlit, lonely old dancing room, why did I never find you before?" she cried. "But," she added, "you need music. There must be some music here." In her fantastic mood, she stretched her soft clasped hands towards the moon. "Sweet moon," she said in a kind of mock prayer, "make your white light come down in music into my dancing room here, and I will dance most deliciously for you to see." She flung her head backwards and let her hands fall. Her eyes were half closed, and her mouth was a kissing mouth. "Ah, sweet moon," she whispered, "do this for me, and I will be your slave. I will be what you will." Quite suddenly, the air was filled with the sound of a grand invisible orchestra. Viola did not stop to wonder. To the music of a slow saraband she swayed and postured. In the music there was a regular beat of small drums and a perpetual drone. The air seemed to be filled with the perfume of some bitter spice.
Viola could almost fancy that she saw a smouldering campfire and heard far off the roar of some desolate wild beast. She let her long hair fall, raising the heavy strands of it in either hand as she moved slowly to the laden music. Slowly her body swayed with drowsy grace. Slowly her satin shoes slid over the silver sand. The music ceased with a clash of cymbals. Viola rubbed her eyes. She fastened her hair up carefully again. Suddenly she looked up almost imperiously. "Music! More music!" she cried. Once more the music came. This time it was a dance of caprice, pelting along over the violin strings, leaping, laughing, wanton. Again an illusion seemed to cross her eyes. An old king was watching her. A king with the sordid history of the exhaustion of pleasure written on his flaccid face. A hook-nosed courtier by his side settled the ruffles at his wrists and mumbled, "Ravissant! Quel malheur qu'elle la vieillesse!" It was a strange illusion. Faster and faster she sped to the music, stepping, spinning, pirouetting. The dance was light as a thistledown, fierce as fire, smooth as a rapid stream. The moment that the music ceased, Viola became horribly afraid. She turned and fled away from the moonlit space, through the trees, down the dark alleys of the maze, not heeding in the least which turn she took, and yet she found herself soon outside the iron gate. From thence she ran, through the palace garden, hardly ever pausing to take a breath, until she reached the palace itself. In the eastern sky the first signs of dawn were showing. In the palace the festivities were drawing to an end. As she stood alone in the outer hall, Prince Hugo came towards her. "Where have you been, Viola?" he said sternly. "What have you been doing?" She stamped her little foot. "I will not be questioned," she replied angrily. "I have some right to question," he said. She laughed a little. "For the first time in my life," she said, "I have been dancing." He turned away in hopeless silence. The months passed away. Slowly, a great fear came over Viola, a fear that would hardly ever leave her. For every month at the full moon, whether she would or no, she found herself driven to the maze, through its mysterious walks, into that strange dancing room. And when she was there, the music began once more, and once more she danced most deliciously for the moon to see. The second time that this happened, she had merely thought that it was a reoccurrence of her own whim, and that the music was but a trick that the imagination had chosen to repeat. The third time frightened her, and she knew that the force that sways the tides had a strange power over her. The fear grew as the year fell, for each month the music went on for a longer time. Each month some of the pleasure had gone from the dance. On bitter nights in winter, the moon called her, and she came. When the breath was vapour, and the trees that circled her dancing room were black bare skeletons, and the frost was cruel. She dared not tell anyone, but yet it was with difficulty that she kept her secret. Somehow chance seemed to favour her, and she always found a way to return from her midnight dance to her own room without being observed. Each month the summons seemed to be more imperious and urgent. Once, when she was alone, on her knees before the lighted altar in the private chapel of the palace, she suddenly felt that the words of the familiar Latin prayer had gone from her memory. She rose to her feet, she sobbed bitterly, but the call had come and she could not resist it. She passed out of the chapel and down the palace gardens. How madly she had danced that night. She was to be married in the spring. She began to be more gentle with Hugo now. She had a blind hope that when they were married she might be able to tell him about it, and he might be able to protect her, for she had always known him to be fearless. She could not love him, but she tried to be good to him. One day he mentioned to her that he had tried to find his way to the centre of the maze, and he had failed. She smiled faintly. If only she could fail, but she never did. On the night before the wedding day, she had gone to bed and slept peacefully, thinking with her last waking moments of Hugo. Overhead the full moon came up the sky. Quite suddenly Viola was wakened with the impulse to fly to the dancing room. It seemed to bid her hasten. With breathless speed, she flung a cloak around her, slipped her naked feet into her dancing shoes, and hurried forth. No one saw her or heard her on the marble staircase of the palace. On down the terraces of the garden she ran as fast as she could. A thorn plant cut her in her cloak, but she sped on, tearing it free. A sharp stone cut through the satin of one shoe, and her foot was wounded and bleeding, but she sped on. As the pebble that is flung from the cliff must fall until it reaches the sea, as the white ghost moth must come from the cool hedges and scented darkness to a burning death in the lamp by which you sit so late, so Viola had no choice. The moon called her. The moon drew her to that circle of hard, bright sand and the pitiless music. It was brilliant, rapid music tonight. Viola threw off her cloak and danced. As she did so, she saw that a shadow lay over a fragment of the moon's edge. It was the night of a total eclipse. She heeded it not. The intoxication of the dance was on her. She was all in white. Even her face was pale in the moonlight. Every movement was full of poetry and grace. The music would not stop. She had grown deathly weary. It seemed to her that she had been dancing for hours, and the shadow had nearly covered the moon's face, so that it was almost dark. She could hardly see the trees around her. She went on, dancing, stepping, spinning, pirouetting, held by the merciless music. It stopped at last, just when the shadow had quite covered the moon's face and all was dark. But it only stopped for a moment and then began again. This time it was slow, passionate waltz. It was useless to resist. She began to dance once more. As she did so, she uttered a sudden shrill scream of horror, for in the dead darkness, a hot hand had caught her own and whirled her around, and she was no longer dancing alone. The search for the missing princess lasted during the whole of the following day. In the evening, Prince Hugo, his face anxious and firmly set, passed in his search the iron gate of the maze, and noticed on the stones beside it the stain of a drop of blood. Within the gate was another stain. He followed this clue, which had been left by Viola's wounded foot, until he reached that open space in the centre that had served Viola for her dancing room. It was quite empty. He noticed that the sand around the edges was all worn down, as though someone had danced there, round and round for a long time. But no separate footprint was distinguishable there. Just outside this track, however, he saw two footprints clearly defined close together. One was the print of a tiny satin shoe. The other was a print of a large naked foot. A cloven foot.
Paine's Victorian nightmare shows us the moon as the seducer and enslaver. What begins as artistic expression becomes supernatural bondage, proving that some performances are more binding than any marriage contract. Paine understood that beneath proper Victorian society lurked something wilder. Behind the corset was a woman who wanted to be free and uninhibited, like she's the moonchild herself. Different eras, different styles, but the same dark truth. When the moon calls, we answer, whether we want to or not. Thank you for joining us today. Until the next lunar cycle, keep your curtains drawn when she's at her fullest, just in case.
Thanks so much for listening. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Flame Tree Myth and Fiction podcast and look forward to the next episode. Do recommend it to your friends. Goodbye for now.